Welcome to your Daily 5 for Thursday, October 31st, 2024. Quite a while ago, I know we talked about it on the show at one point, but a listener had suggested that I read a book titled House of Leaves, and I know I'm going to destroy the author's name, so I just have a link for it in the show notes. And the book sounded interesting. The basic premise of it is that it's sort of a couple of different stories told by a couple of different narrators based on a mythical book that exists, sort of like the Necronomicon or something like that. And there is we're not going too far into it. One of the main storylines concerns a documentary that may or may not exist about a house that was undergoing strange phenomenon. And then there are a couple of other stories, which I won't really detail because I don't want to ruin this book for anybody who wants to read it. But basically, I started reading the book, and I remember that Lando and I talked about it, and I believe Lando said that for him, it was too much of a book that seemed to be basically predicated on the idea of being an experimental novel, which it absolutely is. You really can't read this book in anything other than a physical form. And the book that I got is pretty large because at times the writing is sideways. There's a lot of footnotes. It just kind of only would work, I think, in either some kind of video format, maybe. I don't know how this would work as an audiobook even. I think it's really just made to be a physical book, which I'm fine with. That's okay. I read physical books. That's not a problem. But as I was going through it, I would keep getting these big gaps where I would stop reading it. And I would kind of forget about it. And then I would see it on the shelf because it's a pretty large book. And I would think, oh yeah, I have to get back into that. And I would read it for a little bit. And out of the, what I want to call three main storylines, depending on how you interpret it, only really one of them was ever all that interesting. And the other two just kind of were there. And I got to a point actually early this week. It's funny, somebody asked me about if I had finished the book, and it was right before I was going to record this 5. And I thought about it earlier in the week, I saw it again, and I thought, oh, I have to start reading that again. I've got to finish that book. And then there was a second thought that immediately came to my head, which is, I don't think I've missed reading this book the whole time. And if I don't miss reading it, then why am I reading it? And I don't want to say that as a negative review of the book. I don't think it's poorly written. I think that it is intentionally structured the way that it is. I don't think this is an accident or anything like that. But I think for me, so what I did was I went on the Wikipedia article and I basically read what the plot of the book was because I was curious about something. And sure enough, one of the things I was suspicious of turned out to be true. And I'm not going to say what it is because, again, I don't want to put people off this book if you're interested. But once I realized that one of the storylines ended the way I sort of thought it might, I no longer really wanted to read the book at all because I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to get to the end of this, and I don't think I'm going to be happy I read it. And I'd rather stop a book where it still has some intrigue and interesting bits left and just stop there as opposed to getting to the end and being unhappy with how much time I spent reading it. And actually, if the one storyline that I found the most interesting was to be compiled into its own standalone novella or something, I would absolutely buy it and read it. Because there is one storyline that I think is very compelling. But the problem is the other two are not. And as I said, I found out where those storylines terminate. And it's not a place that I would say I would be satisfied with how they ended up. And so I donated the book to a library. Basically, I took it to a library and I donated the book and I said, here, let somebody else enjoy it because I just know I'm not going to. So, and again, I don't want to position this as a negative review of the book. Art is interpretive. I know people who have written into the show saying they really, really like the book and they find it interesting. And that's great. I'm glad. I'm just not one of them. And like I said, the thing was, once it occurred to me that I didn't miss reading the book, that I wasn't compelled to keep reading it, which I am with most books I enjoy. I want to get back to it so I can keep going. When that wasn't there, I just thought about it and I thought, okay, I'm essentially dedicating time to something that is only minimally giving me any type of satisfaction back. And I don't think that's the right way to keep going with any form of entertainment. If you're not getting something out of it within, I don't know, I usually say with movies the 10, 15 minute mark, but you could probably, expand that a little bit. If you don't know right away that you want to keep going with something, it's probably a sign that it's not for you. Not necessarily that it's bad. I don't want to call something bad if I can't really honestly say it is. But it just, in this case, House of Leaves, for all the enjoyment other people have gotten out of it, I realized at a certain point that I was never going to get that same level of enjoyment. So rather than keep going and not like the fact that I read the book, I just put it aside and then moved it to somebody else who might enjoy it. So that's it. Later.